Welcome to Project Insight's IT methodology training. Today's topic is project control and verification. So just a few things to know before we get started. All participants will be on mute. However, any questions you have are more than welcome. Please type them into the questions box, which you can find on your GoToWebinar dashboard. Also, we do not send out PDU certificates for this particular webinar. However, it may be valid for PDU credit. This is a self-reported session. And for more information, check out our article on webinars and PDUs. My name is Alexa, and I'll be your moderator today. I'm on the marketing team here at Project Insight. And if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please feel free to reach me at alexa.ortegamendoza@projectinsight.com. If you're not familiar with us, Project Insight is a professional project and portfolio management software for project-driven organizations that need high-performing features combined with ease of use. PI provides a better way to deliver optimal performance at a lower cost within a central platform. Gain end-to-end visibility into the workloads of resources, project budget, and status with real-time reports. If you'd like to learn more, please feel free to contact us via phone, email, or request your free customized demo at projectinsight.net. We would like to give a warm welcome to our presenter today, Cameron Watson, President of QAI Asset. Welcome, Cameron, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Alexa. I appreciate the introduction, and I'd also like to make mention that today Alexa's is Alexa's first webinar, and I just wanted to welcome her and thank her for getting here today to keep this organized and keep it on the rails for us. So welcome, Alexa, and I'm looking forward to this session and other sessions as we go forward with all of this. And I would also like to thank Denise, who helped us so much through the series earlier in the year, and all of her hard work and all of her efforts. So that being the case, I believe that we're going to maybe try to, correct me if I'm wrong, Alexa, we're going to try and maybe get some kind of a poll up today.
Right, so before we start, we're going to go ahead and launch a poll to see who's on the call.
Right. So I'm just hoping to get, as I do on all of the sessions, thanks very much, Alexa. I'd like to get a sense of who may be on the call. It helps guide me as I go through some of the content. So be it you're a project manager, maybe you're an operational manager, or you're working with your organizational PMO, or maybe you're just here to get a better understanding of IT methodology. I just hope, I see Alexa's got it up on the board. If you just might take a second and throw it up, and we can take a look at it. Okay.
Yeah, so it looks like 85% are project managers, 8% are members of an organization, and another 8% just want to understand IT methodology a little bit better.
Okay, great. It's a higher percentage of project managers today. That's interesting. And we don't have any operational managers here as of yet. Anyway, that's going to help guide me to focus on some different things as we go through it. And again, to welcome everybody, and let's maybe get to my presentation. I think, Alexa, you maybe clear the screen for me.
Sure.
And we can...
Let me pass presenter rights to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Alexa.
Sure.
As far as today's session, about executing, controlling, and verifying the project, this is going to be our our busiest, I guess, session of the year. There's going to be a lot of content today. We're going to try and wrap a lot of the previous tutorials in today. So I'm going to bat down the hatches and get going. I'm hoping, Alexa, you could confirm for me that that's my picture that you see on the presentation, just to confirm that we've been able to transfer control to me.
Yes, I did.
Okay, that's it. Thanks again, Alexa, and we'll touch base with you upon completion here today. Okay, that's me, and that's our poll. And just for a little bit of a background, I'm going to snap through some things very quickly here as we go through it. Who's QAI Assist? Well, we're from Ottawa, Canada. We focused on IT methodology, knowledge, and expertise. We promote and support different IT methodology products and life cycles, and we also administer a number of different certifications, be it foundation and practitioner. We also support practitioners and authorized affiliates in acquiring more IT methodology knowledge and expertise. And there is none more longstanding than Project Insight. So that's a little bit about who we are. As far as the audience, we've been delivering webinars with Project Insight. We've got audiences from around the world, every different industry. And as you see, there's been over 10,000 registers since we've been delivering the sessions, and here are a number of the different titles. Everybody is welcome, and we try and transfer knowledge depending on irrespective of what your role or responsibility may be. As far as the goals for the session, be it today and the other sessions, we have some common goals that are applicable. We try and share our knowledge for IT methodology. We try and develop an understanding and expertise as we go through the different sessions. We also touch on a number of different life cycles or methodologies, be it project management, software development, software testing. We discuss best practices in incorporating these, and we also like to promote an ongoing dialogue and feedback within the webinar audience, be it questions or email or survey. I know Alexa had mentioned that the idea of posing a question, so please feel free, be it during the session or after the session. If you do have any questions on the content or require further context or clarity, please feel free to get in touch with us. And I do believe we have a 100% response rate in engaging with anybody who has a question. So please feel free to pose questions. As far as the schedule for, we said there's a series. We have two different sessions. We have the concept sessions and the tutorials. Both are 60 minutes in length. The concept sessions are every second month, and we're trying to introduce some new concepts, and we're trying to provide a context and overview of some general understanding of IT methodology or methodologies or life cycles. The tutorials, they're more hands-on. They're every second month. There's 5 of them. And what we're trying to do is bridge the concept sessions into a practical utilization, get down into the nuts and the bolts, and we use a sample and example, and we go through it. So today's session is going to be one of those. So as far as today's sessions, like all of our other sessions, we have goals. So we're trying to, for today's session, we're going to try and understand the previously delivered tutorial. So I'm going to try and get everybody to the same point in time and a context of how we got here through the earlier sessions. I'm going to do a quick wrap-up of them. And we're also going to review in more detail the last session. We called it the hiccupless project, meaning we are going to start a project and we are going to run it through completion, and there are going to be no problems, and it was going to be perfect. The idea there was to get everybody through methodologies, be it project management, software development, and software testing, and how all of the life cycles and phases and deliverables flowed. Okay, so we established that in the last session. Then we're going to reference some of the earlier deliverables, project management deliverables, as we go through today's sessions. And then we're going to get into a reality, and we're going to call it a hiccup-filled project, meaning to say there's going to be problems, there's going to be changes, there's going to be risks, there's going to be issues. And hopefully in today's sessions, we're going to be able to lean on some of the knowledge we gained earlier by going through the perfect project, and we're going to say, okay, now this is where we are. What method or what deliverables are we going to use? How are we going to use them? And the dynamics of the life cycles and the deliverables. So that are our goals today. So as far as the agenda, we have agendas for all of our sessions. And as I said earlier, we're going to try and provide a little bit of a context, as I do at the start of all of the sessions, and we're going to give a little snapshot of IT methodology context. We're going to introduce some terms. Then we're going to get a context for the tutorial. We're going to review the sample project, go over it again, a little high level, and then we're going to touch on the previous deliverables for February, April, and June to get us to the same common point. Then we're going to get into this hiccup-filled project, and we're going to be talking about dependencies and dynamics and deliverables. And we're going to cite them and view some of the examples of what we're going to use to control and verify our project as we go through it. So we're going to be talking about issues and risks and change requests, status reporting as we go through, testing defects and authorizations, be it for unit, system integration, and user acceptance. And then we're going to recap. So as I said, we've got a lot of detail to go through today. So without further ado, let us get started. As far as the IT methodology context, we talk about terms, and more terms. IT framework, IT methodology, IT lifecycle. There's no standard usage of terminology in the industry. The terms are used interchangeably between organizations and across the IT industry. Examples could include a project management framework or project management methodology or lifecycle. Same for software development. You may have heard of SDLC or software development methodology or lifecycle. Similarly with software testing, a framework or lifecycle. I'm not trying to get into a discussion about which term is most apt or which one is applicable to your particular organization or client. All I'm trying to say is when we're talking about methodology, there are different terms that are being used, and we have to be cognizant of that. The one point I like to make is that every organization that has its doors open today is using information technology, and they are using a methodology or a life cycle or a framework or a number of them to be able to deliver products and services. I'm not suggesting the methods or methodologies or life cycles they're using are the best practices. I'm not saying they're aligned with industry recognized guidelines or standards. All I'm saying is to be able to deliver a product out the door or a service out the door, organizations are using a method or a life cycle within their information technology platforms. Okay, that being stated, I'd like to talk about methodology in two perspectives. One is a context of a noun and one is a context of a verb. And when I'm talking about IT methodology or life cycle in the context of a noun, I'm talking about a structure. And this structure is going to have its own naming conventions and terminology. You may have heard of Rational Unified Process or PMI or Prince2. These are methodologies in the context of the noun. And each of them, there is a hierarchy or a structure for all of these. At the high end, at the top of the hierarchy is the methodology or the life cycle. So there would be a project management life cycle or methodology, software development methodology or life cycle or framework, and software testing similarly. Within the methodology or methodologies or life cycles, there are going to be phases or stages that are used, and there's a naming convention that's incorporated into them. So you may have an initiate phase or a planning stage or a design stage or a closeout phase. So that's the next level down within the hierarchy. Underneath that, there are going to be deliverables or artifacts or products that are predefined and are incorporated into the stages and or phases. So you may have heard of a project charter deliverable or a testing strategy deliverable or a training plan deliverable. So this is the sequence and the hierarchy that that methodology in the context of a noun use. And at the bottom, there are activities. These are going to be the tasks performed by the project team members to complete the deliverables or artifacts or work products of the phases of the methodology. Okay, so that's a little bit of an overview of the methodology in the context of a noun. So we look here, and just to go over a little in a different context, we see the QAI Assist integrated methodology. On the left, we see the life cycles, project management, software development, software testing. And then we see the phases within each of the methodology. And then within each of the different phases, we see specific deliverables that are incorporated. So this is one depiction of a methodology. It's a roadmap. Here's another way of looking at a methodology. We're using the Project Insight tool. And as we see here, we have the project management lifecycle. And within the project management lifecycle, we have the specific deliverables that are used or can be used to deliver project management for a given project. I'm not going to get caught up in the time frames or the timelines, but this is how it can look rather than the previous diagram. This would be the software development lifecycle using the Project Insight tool. All we're doing is defining the lifecycle and laying out the deliverables that are going to be performed by the project team. As we see, be it for the project management lifecycle, or the software development lifecycle, or the software testing lifecycle, all we see is deliverables. We do not see any activities. The activities are done by the project team members to populate and have the deliverable completed. So we're talking about deliverables in IT methodology. Because they're tangible, because there's predefined informational requirements in each deliverable, i.e. a project charter would have a certain amount of content in it. The content in it would be different than the information in a testing strategy deliverable or in a detailed requirements deliverable or in a closeout report deliverable. So there's different informational needs in each deliverable. Now, when we're talking about deliverables, they're tangible, and because they're tangible, they can be identified and defined, and they can be reflected on the project schedule, as we've just seen. They can be assigned, meaning project members are going to be responsible for completing them. They can also, because they're tangible, they can also be referenced by other project team members, so everybody remains on the same page, i.e. everybody can read the project charter. Everybody can read the testing strategy. They can be formally reviewed and officially authorized. They're going to alter within their own lifespan as far as being authored, reviewed, approved. They're going to be reflected on the project schedule and updated as far as how the progress is progressing, or the project is progressing, excuse me. Because they are tangible, they can be placed under formal configuration management, and they're going to evolve. And they can also be referenced because they're tangible by future maintenance or support teams to say, okay, what was the charter? Oh, what was the requirements deliverable? Oh, what was the testing plan? All the deliverables can be put under configuration management and referenced. Okay. Now that's different than methodology, the term methodology lifecycle in the context of a verb. I'm going to cite a couple. You may have heard of waterfall or agile. And these are, I guess, the opposite end of the pendulum. We're talking about waterfall. It's basically a single iteration through the methodology or life cycle in the context of a noun. So are you going to have the life cycle? You're going to go through the phases. You're going to do the deliverables of each phase in sequence until you have done one iteration of the life cycle, and then you will be complete. There are going to be deliverables assigned and documented. And there's a formal structure and rigor when we're talking about waterfall as far as the actual phase is done and actual deliverables are done and the assignment of them. Now that's a little bit different than the agile methodology or life cycle in the context of a verb. We're talking about here is that there's going to be more than one iteration. So we may, going through the software development life cycle, we may define a certain amount of functionality that we want to define requirements, we want to build, we want to test, and we want to say, okay, this can go into production environment. Okay, the next piece of functionality. So there could be multiple iterations through the methodology in the context of the noun. Okay, there is a lot less deliverables or formal creation of deliverables using the agile techniques or life cycle. And there's not as much structure as far as being used or relied upon to get the actual delivery of the application into the production environment. That's a little bit about it. So essentially, when we're talking about waterfall, we'll start with our project manager will initiate it, we'll plan it, deliverables in it. In our planning, we're going to plan all of the different phases and the deliverables that are going to be used by the project team. Then we're going to execute it, and then we're going to do one iteration through the software development and software testing lifecycle, all the different phases, and the needed deliverables. And upon completion of that one iteration, we're going to close out the project. Now, that's different than we're talking about the agile techniques in that we could do multiple iterations of the software development and software testing lifecycle, depending on the amount of functionality that we're going to be delivering. Okay, that gets us to a quick review of all the previous tutorials. So let's first look at the sample project that we started with in January. We wanted to say, okay, let's set up a sample project. So we talked about this company called ABC Company. It's a mid-sized company. And the strategic direction was to incorporate outsourcing or an outsourcing option into their existing operations. So the existing accounting application functionality did not meet evolving regulatory legislation for outsourcing. It didn't deliver the functionality necessary to administer outsourcing and vendor relations. It did not provide stability or uptime to the business users for that functionality, and it didn't allow for expansion. So we called this project, or we deemed it to be, for the sake of our tutorials, the extended accounting system. What we did then was started through and defined our team that was going to be applicable to applying the methodology and life cycles to the project. We said we had a system owner, stakeholders, business managers. Now, the idea of, I know this is all fictitious, and I know everybody on the line has a different corporate structure, and there may be small companies being represented today or larger, but this was the context we had for the sample. So all of the deliverables that have been done to date are using these definitions as the basis. Okay. So the first tutorial was in February, and the tutorial was about project initiation. And this is the agenda for it. And essentially what we were trying to do with this session was say, okay, what do we have to do to get ready to start a project? And we talked about some of the different things in having to identify a business need and some of the things we needed to initiate the project management lifecycle, projects or software development lifecycle, and software testing lifecycle. This is what we talked about in February. And as we went through, and again, all of the deliverables that were produced were in reference to the sample project, and you can go back and reference them through the Project Insight website. They are up and available. And we talked about project management deliverables. We talked about doing a project charter, and we needed to define some roles and responsibilities for the project. So these deliverables were looked at in the session. We also said when we're initiating a project, there's some things we need to do at the start of the project. We need to identify a business case, prepare it, deliverable. We're going to get a high-level definition or a description of what the requirements are. Again, they are up and available through the Project Insight website. We also said in the software testing there were some things we needed to do at the start of a project. We wanted to lay out a testing strategy for the whole of the project. The idea was that we didn't want to have testing wait till the 11th hour before we started focusing on it. So these are the deliverables that we looked at in February. We then went to April and we said, we have to start planning our project. Okay, we've initiated. Okay, what are we going to do to plan our project? And essentially what we are doing was saying, there are some deliverables we are going to have to prepare. We know the project has started. Well, we better have a project plan. We better have a project schedule or a work breakdown structure to get further clarity on the roles and responsibilities. We're going to identify and lay out and describe the deliverables that we're going to do for the project. We're also going to make reference to a configuration management plan as far as how we're going to take care of things as we go through the life of the project. And we've also talked about a quality assurance plan to make sure that as we're going through the project, we can monitor the activities and how they're being done in accordance with the plan. We also wanted to lay out some procedures as far as how the team was going to go through the project, be it how they're going to place things under configuration management, be it how they're going to report team status. So there's a number of procedures that we've identified, and again, all of these are available in the April tutorial. We also talked about in the project management part of the tutorial that there were going to be a need for deliverables as we started to execute the project through the software development and software testing lifecycle. We knew that there were probably going to be issues as we went through the project. So we needed an issue log. We needed to define the issues and we needed the issue log. We knew there was probably going to be risks, so we had to identify or place risk definition and a risk log to keep track of all the risks. We knew there may be changes to the functionality that was going to be delivered in the application. So we needed to define the changes. We also needed something to keep track of all the changes in a change request log. We knew that we're going to need project status reporting and team status reporting. Project status reporting would be to the stakeholders to let them know how the project was proceeding and how the team members were performing. We are also going to have a team status that the project team members would be reporting into the project manager or to the business manager as far as how they are progressing on their specific deliverables. We are also going to need some form of defect log as far as when we are doing our unit testing to be able to keep track of all of the unit testing defects. We are also going to need something to keep track of our integration testing defects, and we're also going to need another log for our user acceptance defect log. Now, in the planning stage in April, we weren't going to populate any of this, nor was any of the team going to populate this. We are just going to, as a project manager, make them available. So as we got executing the project, these deliverables were open and available to the project team so that they can populate them as they required. So that then gets us to June. And in June, we talked about the hiccupless project. We talked about the perfect project. We talked about a project that we are going to start. All the requirements were going to be defined. All of the requirements were going to be perfect. We are going to pass it along through unit testing. There were going to be no defects. There was going to be no defects through integration testing. There was going to be no defects through user acceptance testing. And we are going to pass it along into the production environment. The reason we did this in June was to lay out some of the mechanics of the methodology and how it would flow. So I'm going to get into a little more description here today to go over that, to set a little bit of a baseline. So when we go into the project that's not perfect, the one that has the hiccups or the warts. So let me take a few minutes here. We're still in good time. And we talked about this idea of any project that we're going to be doing where you're going to need data and we are going to need process. The process is going to actually do things to the data. So once we have our data defined, we are then able to draw a correlation to the process that is going to be used to take care of that data, whatever that functionality may be. We also said the functionality was going to be further described or broken down from the process. So we have a black process, we have a purple process, we have a blue process. And from in that, we're going to define further granularity for each of those processes and defining functionality. And because we're breaking down the functionality into smaller bits and pieces, we are ultimately going to be able to know and drive out the actual number of application programs we are going to require to be able to deliver that functionality. So the programs are driven out of the functionality that have been defined by the processes, and the processes are in a direct relationship to the data that we've been able to define that we're going to require to deliver our application. And ultimately, all of that information is going to be authored, defined, and approved in our requirements document. So conceptually, we've introduced this concept. So we cited a little example here, and we said, okay, we're going to talk about it, just to go over this point one more time. We're going to be talking about an accounting application. We'll say there's going to be different functionality, be receivables, payables, payroll. And each of these different functions are going to be further broken down. And you can read them all as well as me. I'm trying to introduce the concept here. Each one of these functions is further broken down. So we talked in the earlier slide about data, and we talked about process. So when we're talking about it from a data perspective, we're going to have data associated at the accounting level, at a very high level. And we're going to call that data subject. As we break down the data into smaller pieces, we are going to call this topic. So in this case, it would be receivables, payables, and payroll. So there's going to be data associated with receivables. associated with payables and payroll. And we know within each of the topics, we are going to be able to break that data down further. And we're going to call this the entities. So there's going to be entities within these topics. Now, when we talk about process, we're going to use a number of different terms. At the high level, at the accounting level, we're going to use system, because the system is going to break down into subsystems, and the subsystems are going to break down into functions. So we see that there's a correlation between data and process. We're talking, though, in the process perspective, and we've broken it down into our functions. We can further break it down. So for the sake of accounting and receivables and customer attained, we're going to have client marketing, that functionality, sales promotion, and a CRM. But ultimately, these are the modules or programs that are going to have to be built to effectively deliver customer attained, which is part of receivables of accounting. So that's the structure that we're going to use, and I'm going to tie it back into the deliverables in the software development lifecycle as we go through. So now that we've talked about the structure, we can use this structure to apply a naming convention, because it's going to help us as we reference going through the development and the testing. So at the top end, we're going to call something S1. And we're going to have subsystems. And we can start them with SS1 and 2 and 3. And you'll come to understand here in a minute why the naming convention and the structure is of consequence. So within subsystem 1, we are going to have function 1. Subsystem 1, function 1, which would be customer attained. We have function 2, function 3 of subsystem 1. And again, I'm just using this as an example. Every different application we're going to be building is going to have different complexity, different data, different process. It's the structure that I'm talking about here and the naming convention. So we ultimately have the layout of our function, of our subsystems, of our functions. We've got them all labeled. And we also know within the subsystems and the functions that we're going to have programs. So we have subsystem 1, function 1, program 1. Okay, so for the sake of this example, this is the structure we're going to use. And you'll see in a minute where it all ties in. So as we go through our document or our methodology in the software development lifecycle, we have our detailed business requirements already defined at the start of the project. We know that we're going to have a high-level solution design deliverable. And ultimately, what we're going to be doing in this deliverable, the high-level solution design deliverable, we're going to lay out a very high-level description of the system, of reference to the subsystems that are incorporated in the system, and a reference to the functions within each of the subsystems. Now, we're not going into a full-blown detail of each and every one of the subsystems or the functions. We will get into that with further deliverables. But we're just trying to define a global perspective on what all of this functionality is at a very high level. So we'll lay out the systems, the subsystems, and the functions at a high level in our high-level solution design deliverable. Okay, so as we go through methodology, and we go from the systems analysis phase into the design phase, we're going to use this high-level system or high-level solution design deliverable, and we're going to break it down further. As we talked about earlier, we're going to get into a detailed solution design. And essentially what we're going to do is we're going to have one deliverable per function. So we're going to have a detailed solution design deliverable for subsystem 1, function 2, function 3, and function 4. And similarly for the other functions, we are going to have one deliverable, one detailed solution design deliverable per function of each subsystem. Okay. So now we know we have our high-level solution design, we have our detailed solution design deliverables, one per function, and we also know from the structure and the naming convention, we also know the modules or programs that are going to have to be built. We've driven them down using our process model. So we're going to have programming specifications, one per module. And we'll use the naming convention to actually name it Client Marketing SS1, F1, P1. So we have the structure, and we now know what the naming convention is for the different programs. Once we have the programming specification and the detailed solution design deliverables completed, we are then able to say, let's go and code. We can code. We know how many programming specifications. We know how many programs we have. So we can actually go and code. Okay, so that being the case, just back to the structure again. So ultimately, when we have it all defined, we're going to have our high-level solution design deliverables. We're going to have our detailed solution design deliverables per function, and we're going to have our programming specifications in our requirements documents. So ultimately, here's another look at it. These deliverables are going to be completed as far as defining our requirements, which enables us to code. Okay, so then we talked about tracing. We have to be able to trace requirements as we go through the life cycle, the software development life cycle. So when we're talking about traceability and requirements, the idea of the requirements traceability is to manage the requirements through the software development and software testing life cycle. We want to have a repository of all the authorized requirements, be it in the high-level solution design deliverable, the detailed solution design deliverables, or the programming specifications. We need a repository of all the requirements, and with the naming conventions. We also want to correlate the user requirements as far as specifics go. We also want to categorize the requirements by type, be it a user requirement or a business rule or standard. And we also want to make sure that this requirements traceability is done because it's going to act as the gatekeeper for all of the different testing we're going to be doing, be it user acceptance, system integration, and unit testing authorizations. Because if we have the matrix as we go through all the different phases and we have the deliverables with all the requirements, we are going to say, okay, have all of these requirements when we're done our unit testing been completed? Yes. Has it been for system integration testing? Yes. Has it been done for user acceptance testing? Fine. We're going to use the requirements traceability for authorizing. So essentially, just to show it in a pictorial, we're going to start our project. We're going to plan our project as per normal, what phases we're going to do, what deliverables we're going to do, execute and control. And as we go through the software development, software testing life cycles, you'll see that there's a requirements traceability log in each and every phase of the software development and software testing. The idea here is as we're populating deliverables, be it for requirements or testing, and we're hitting hiccups, that we're going to have to keep track of the requirements as we go through and keep tracing of them. So I'm just trying to show in a picture here the different or the need to do traceability of the requirements. So we've got them all. And once we're completed, then we can close our project. So that's the requirements definition. Okay, we're almost through our June session here. And the idea of, sorry, let me get back to that previous slide. What we're trying to do here is talk about the requirements and how they're going to act in relation to the testing. So we know when we go start our project, we plan it, again, all the deliverables. We know that we have our high-level solution design deliverable. We know we have our high-level solution design deliverable, or our detailed solution design deliverables for each of the functions that we've driven out. And we know we have our programming specifications for each of the functions. Well, in the programming specifications, we know how many programs we have. We know how much code we have to write. Well, for the sake of testing, we can use those programming specifications because we know what the requirements are. They're defined in the programming specifications. We can use them to create a unit test plan for that particular and specific programming specification. We can also lay out the unit test evaluation criteria, meaning we know what the requirements are. So at the same time, we may as well define out what the plan is for that unit test and what the evaluation criteria is, meaning what the condition has to be able to have that unit test passed before we actually do testing. Because once we have that, the plan and the evaluation criteria for unit testing, we're going to use this to do our testing. Similarly, when we're doing our system integration testing, assuming we have our unit test authorization completed, we know when we're doing our project, we know we have our high-level solution design deliverable and our detailed solution design deliverables per function. Well, we're going to use these functions and these deliverables, each of these deliverables, and we're going to be able to define all our system integration testing plans and our evaluation criteria for our system integration testing. And we are then going to use these plans and this evaluation criteria to actually do our system integration testing. We know how many functions we have. We know what the evaluation criteria is because it's defined in the requirement. And now we're going to use that in references as we actually do our integration testing. Similarly, when we're doing our user acceptance testing, we've got our high-level solution design deliverable done. We're going to lay out our user acceptance test plan for the requirements based on the high-level solution design deliverable. And we're going to also complete our evaluation criteria. And we're going to use this to do all of our user acceptance testing. Once we have all these authorizations completed, unit test, integration testing, or user acceptance testing, we can close our project. So that gets us through June, and that gets us through the perfect project. We didn't have any problems. We didn't have any issues or risks or change requests. Well, now we are going to step into reality, I guess, is a better or a best way to put it. I'm going to take a quick drink of water here. I'm talking too much, perhaps. Okay, thanks, guys. Back. And what we're going to do is we're going to step into reality. And we're going to be talking about a hiccup-filled project. And this is what each and all of us face each and every day. This is the reality that we call home. And we say, how many hiccups are we going to hit? And we're going to now go into some deliverables. I think we're still in pretty good time. We've got about 15, 16 minutes left here. So let's get started on how we're going to control and how we're going to verify things. As per norm, we're going to start with our project, initiate it, and we're going to plan it, doing these deliverables. And as we're planning our project and the deliverables and the phases that we're going to be doing, going to execute our project, there are going to be deliverables. If you remember back, we mentioned earlier in April that there were some project management deliverables that we were going to do, i.e. the project plan, project schedule. All of these things are going to be done or should be close to being completed before we start our project. But we also mentioned at that time, we are going to establish a number of other deliverables that we knew we were going to use to help control and verify the project. They were these potential deliverables that we deemed them to be: issue and issue log, risk and risk log, change request and change request log, project status report, team status report, unit defect log, integration test defect log, user acceptance defect log. We need these deliverables because we're going to hit hiccups, we are going to hit pitfalls, we're going to hit reality. Who knows what we're going to hit? So we need the mechanisms to be able to define, to document, to understand, and to be able to keep track of these things. So let's talk about the issue log. as we start our project, there could be an issue. Well, we better keep track of it. We better define what it is, and we better keep track of it in a log to make sure we have a centralized place to keep all of our issues. So we can, at a glance, say, these are the issues associated with the project, or this one's been resolved, or this one's still outstanding, or whatever. So I'm going to quickly jump through here, and it doesn't matter whether we're in the plan phase, the initiate phase of the project management, or we're in our software development and testing phases. It doesn't matter. We could hit issues, okay? And we have to be able to define what the issue is, and we have to keep track of it in a log. So I'm just jumping through here. But no matter what phase we're in or what deliverable we're doing, there are probably going to be issues. This is the project with hiccups. This is reality. So we are going to, I'm just trying to exemplify here the idea that project issues can pop up anywhere, any phase, any deliverable, anything with the project team. So we have to have somewhere to keep track of them, to define them and keep track of them. Okay. So let's take a quick look at project issues and what they may look like. So essentially, what we're trying to do here is identify what the issue may be and to document it. So it's going to be documented, monitored, and mitigated throughout the life of the project. So let me try my technical expertise here, or limited technical expertise. So we've got an issue. Okay. We need some place. Here's the definition form. We're going to define the issue, and we're going to lay out the status of it. We're going to lay out when it happened. We're going to describe what it is. We're going to say who authored it. Okay. So the idea here, and I'm not going to get caught into details of everything on an issue, but on an issue definition form, all I'm trying to get at is that we need some place to define the issues. We have it formally documented. So be it me as the project manager or you as a system owner, everybody knows that there are particular issues and there's a place to document them. Okay. We also want to keep track of the issues. So at the end of the day, we can have a snapshot of all the different issues. Okay. So let me try this again. Here's the issue log. And essentially, what we're trying to do, here's the first issue. Now, I haven't listed a whole bunch of issues for the project, but ultimately at a snapshot, we're able to say, what is the issue? What's its number? Who's the originator? What's its description? When was it done? So at a snapshot, the project manager or one of the team members can say, oh, okay, well, what are the outstanding issues with the project? Okay, so that being the case, let's get to the idea of the risk. So I want to differentiate to me, or from my perspective, the difference between issue and issue log. If I have an issue, it may be a little bit of a problem as far as things that have to be addressed, but it doesn't necessarily have an impact on the cost of the project, on the schedule of the project, or the quality of the project. I view risk at a much higher level than an issue. So when I talk about risk log and what should be incorporated in a risk log, I'm talking about something that's going to have a detrimental effect on the schedule, on the cost, or the quality. Okay, similarly, when we go through it, and it's much the same as the issue log, as we're executing, controlling the project, we can hit a risk anywhere, anything to do with the schedule or cost or quality. So I'll just jump through this, but you get the idea here. We're going to have risks or potential risks as the project team goes through the software development, software testing of the project. Okay? And similarly, we need a place to document what the risk is. We need to be able to reference it and have an official record of what it is. So essentially, there's our risk. Much the same as the the issue log. It's got different content though, and it's going to cite that there's a problem to do with anything to do with the quality or the cost or the schedule, and it's going to lay it all out. Similarly, when we look at the risk log, all we're trying to do with it is keep track of all of the different risks. So this is just reference to the risk we've just shown. Okay, we need issue log, we need issue definition, we need risk definition and risk log. Okay, that then gets us to the change request and change log. We're going to have changes as we go through. As we go through defining our requirements, or as we go through testing our functionality, there is probably going to be alterations in the functionality that we thought was right or should be right. So we're going to have to keep track of any changes that have been introduced to the original definition of the requirements. Now, we may, as we go through the testing, we may incorporate these changes into a current version that we're developing. We may be able to say, no, we're going to lump all of these change requests into a new version which we can build later. Irrespective of how we want to handle that, we need to document what the change request is of the functionality. And we also have to keep track of all of these changes in a log. So, again, it's very similar to the other. As we go through the different life cycles, we are going to hit different hiccups. And if we hit a change to the requirements, be it from the testing or the definition, we are going to document the change request, and we're going to keep track of it in a log. So the change requests, as I said earlier, the idea is we have to keep track of what they are, right? And we have to keep, let's take a quick look at it here. Change request log. Here's a change request. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is say, here's a change request form. What's the change request? Where was it? What was it? Who found it? When was it found? What does it include? What are the benefits that are going to be? And again, it doesn't always have to be populated, but it's important that we say, let's document this. Similarly, we need a change log to keep track for all of us and for the project team and the stakeholders that we've got a sense of all the different change requests that have been touched on as we've gone through the project. Okay. So that gets us to status reporting. And again, I'm running a little behind. Hope everybody is still with me. I'm probably about 5 minutes late here. So anyway, as we go through the project again, we are going to have to report status. We're going to have to report a project team status and a team status. The team status is going to be by individuals working on deliverables of the project team to prepare a status report that is submitted to the project manager and or business manager so it can be reviewed so they can have a status that they can bring to the stakeholders via a project status report. And you're going to have to be doing status reports through all of the phases of the software development and software lifecycle, be it analysis, design, test, release. Okay, so let's take a quick look at those different status reports. Team status report. This will be done by each team member, and depending on the frequency, it could be bi-weekly, it could be monthly, depending on the project and the complexity and what the project manager or the stakeholders want. So essentially what you're trying to do is say, okay, this is what's been done this week, these are deliverables I worked on, plans for next week, blah, blah, blah. And again, you can populate this till your heart's content, whatever is required. We also are going to have the team status report. And essentially what this is going to do is lay out to the project team ownership what the progress of the project is. Oops, sorry guys. Okay. Okay, so that's the status reporting. We are also going to have to report testing defects. We are going to hit defects. We're doing unit testing. We're going to hit defects when we do system integration testing, and we do user acceptance testing because we're talking about reality. And in all of my years and all of my practices being developing, be it testing, be it project management, I've yet to see a project that did not have some difficulty going through it. So how are we going to do that? Well, as we touched on earlier, we're trying to get the unit test authorized. So we start our project again, and we touched on a lot of this. Essentially, we develop our requirements for our high-level solution design, our detailed solution design, our programming specs, and we have our unit test plans defined and our unit test evaluation criteria. We use this then to do our unit testing. We use the code, unit test plan, and evaluation criteria. We know all the programs that are being built. We know all the requirements. We know all the evaluation criteria as far as what's successful. And we're going to go through iterations, 1, 2, 10, however many it takes, until all of this evaluation criteria of all of the programs or modules are completed. And eventually, we are going to get to a point, be it one iteration of unit testing, in which we do all of the unit testing for each program using our unit test plans, our evaluation criteria. We document things or hiccups in the defect log, and until we have it all completed, we can then authorize it. So if we are bumping into defects, we're going to document all of the defects for each of the different programs or modules in a defect log. We are then going to be able to say, okay, do we go back and change our requirements, or do we introduce a change request? We know we've hit a hiccup. Why is this not being resolved? So we're going to go through iteration of unit testing on all of the different programs until all of the evaluation criteria that we've already got predefined has been completed. Okay. Essentially, the defect log is just going to lay out what the test was for the program, what the expected result was based on the evaluation criteria, what the actual result was based on running the test, and the problem or hiccup. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to get into it. It'll be much the same for the system integration testing and units. The idea is, though, that we have to document any hiccups that we've had that deviates the expected result from the evaluation criteria and the actual results from the testing. Okay. Similarly, as I said earlier, we can go through many iterations of testing before we have all of the evaluation criteria, the unit test evaluation criteria, satisfied, at which time we can say that our unit test is finally authorized, our unit testing. So the unit test authorization is used to say, oh, all of our unit testing is done. So we'll take a quick look at that. It's similar to the system integration test, but I'll jump into it and take a quick look at it here. The unit testing authorization, essentially what we're going to do here is give an affirmation that the testing done for the unit, for all of the unit testing is complete. And basically what it does, it says, here are the deliverables and the completed that have been done. The programming modules, all of the unit test plans have been performed. The unit test log, case, and scripts are free of errors. The unit test evaluation is complete. So this then gives the check mark for additional testing to be done. Okay, similarly then, as we go into the next, for unit testing, these are the different deliverables depending on the iterations and the amount of hiccups we hit that may have to be altered. You may have to alter the project schedule, the issues logs, the change request logs. You may be populating or reintroducing things to these different logs. You're also going to have to maybe be changing your product status report and the team status report. Okay, so let's assume we've got the unit testing completed. Oh, these are the software testing deliverables that may have to be altered depending on our unit testing. Could be the high-level solution design, could be the detailed solution design deliverables, programming specification, or the requirements traceability matrix. And these are the testing deliverables that may be addressed or changed based on the unit testing. So similarly, system integration testing, this is where we're trying to get to, the authorization of system integration testing. So We know we have our unit test authorized. And as we went through our project and we planned it all, we did our deliverables, we did our detailed solution design deliverables, one per function. We were able to drive out our system integration test plans per function and our evaluation criteria for those functions and those subsystems. Well, we are going to use the plans and the evaluation criteria of these functions and subsystems. We know the unit code has passed unit testing. It's now available for integration testing. So we are going to do our integration testing using our planning and our evaluation criteria. And we may go through several iterations. We may hit hiccups. We will have to keep track of them via the system integration defect log as we bump into them. And again, we're going to be using the same principle. We have the plans, we have the evaluation criteria defined before we do our testing. We know what the expected result is for these functions and subsystems. Any hiccups we have when we do our testing, we will document it. We'll have to look into the defect log to make sure all of them are resolved before we can actually pass the code into user acceptance testing. Essentially, it's the same as the unit testing, except the criteria is defined because the requirement is at a higher level. So essentially, what we're doing is talking about the subsystems and the functions when we're doing integration testing, and we're going to be using the integration test plans, the evaluation criteria, the defect log, and eventually, when it's all completed and there are no defects in the integration test log, we are going to authorize it. The defect log is much like the unit test log, and for the sake of timing, I'm not going to get into it and cite the example, but I'm hoping you get the idea here. So once we have that, and again, I said there could be multiple iterations of the integration testing to go against the evaluation criteria using the system plan, but eventually we're going to have it all complete, and there'll be no integration, there'll be no system integration defects. That's going to put us in a position to authorize the integration testing. And again, it's much like the unit testing. All we're trying to do is say, we've done all of the necessary activity within the system integration test environment to say we can pass the code along to further testing into the user acceptance environment. And again, deliverables are going to have to be potentially addressed in the project management lifecycle, depending on the system integration testing that's being done within the software development testing or software development lifecycle. Some of the deliverables may have to be addressed depending on what hiccups we have or what we might have to change. And that then gets us to user acceptance testing. And again, it's much the same. We're trying to get to an authorization of the user acceptance testing. We know we have our unit test done. The code has passed it. We know we have our integration test. It has passed it. And as we start our project again, we know at the very start, we laid out our high-level solution design. At this level, and the definition of the requirements at that level in our high-level solution design deliverable, we were able to define user acceptance test plan. We are also able to define, based on knowing what the requirements are, what the evaluation criteria would be to make sure those requirements have been satisfied. We are going to use them now, they're already predefined, to go through our user acceptance testing. We take the unit code, we're going to have our integration authorization, our unit test authorization. We'll take our user acceptance test plan and the evaluation criteria, and we're going to do our testing. And we may be going through multiple iterations of the testing from the user acceptance testing perspective, but ultimately what we're going to be doing is testing at the high level from our high-level solution design requirements. And these are the different deliverables that we're going to be using: the user acceptance test plan, which we've got defined, the evaluation criteria that we established. We're going to keep track of any hiccups in the defect log for user acceptance testing, and eventually we're going to authorize it for the user acceptance testing. And again, much like unit testing and system integration testing, the defect log keeps track of any hiccups from the difference between what we projected to be the expected results in the evaluation criteria and the actual results of doing the testing. And again, there could be several iterations. Once we have it all complete, then we can close our project and user authorization. And it's much the same as the user acceptance test authorization and the integration test authorization, meaning to say everything has been looked at, all of the user acceptance testing has been completed, and it's ready to go to a production environment. So these are some of the deliverables when we're doing a user acceptance testing that may have to be altered in the project management lifecycle, software development lifecycle, software testing. So that gets us through everything. I know I'm about 7 minutes late here according to my clock. And for the sake of the recap, we talked about the context of the methodology. We talked about the tutorial, the previous tutorial. We talked about the hiccup the hiccup list project. Sorry, guys. And how we got to February, April, and June. And again, there is reference to the Project Insight website, all of those specific webinars that you can go back and look at specific deliverables. And then we got into how we're going to actually control and verify our project with these different project management deliverables. So that gets us through the end of the session. I just wanted to touch base and let you know that, again, that there's a body of knowledge out there from the QA Assist perspective. And if you wanted to go in and find out more as far as documents or deliverable descriptions or life cycles, please feel free to jump in and take a look at it. So until the next session, I'm not sure if there's any questions today. I'm not sure if is there anything being posed, Alexa? I see I've got Denise's name down here. I should have altered that. I apologize. I'm not sure if there's any questions today. In any event, we can maybe I'll be done here in a second and pass it over to Alexa. Maybe you can explore more of the body of knowledge. You want to find out more about becoming a practitioner, or perhaps you can invite your peers. So today's session was a tutorial, and we said earlier there's concepts and tutorial sessions. Control and verification was in August, and the next one is going to be closed and delivery of the project, and that'll be in October, tutorial. And the concept session we're going to be talking about next is from a governance perspective, and that'll be done in September. And that gets us back to my friend, Alexa, and I'll pass it over to you, and hopefully you can take control and go from there. Alexa?
Great. Thank you, Cameron.
And I apologize. Sorry, Alexa. I just wanted to apologize for everybody for taking a few minutes to get over everything. I just wanted to make sure everybody's on the same page prior to getting into the content today. So thank you for everybody for your patience. And sorry, I'll pass it back to you, Alexa.
Great. Thank you again, Cameron. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at alexa.ortega-mendoza@Project Insight. If you would like to schedule your customized demo, you can do so by giving us a call, or you can also fill out a request demo form at projectinsight.net. And if you would like more information on QAI Assist, please reach out to Cameron Watson via phone, email, or visit their website at www.qaiassist.com. And for those of you on social media, I would like to invite you to follow, like, and subscribe our social media channels. Our handle on Twitter is @ProjectInsight, and you can also find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for the latest in PI and project management news. So in our Project Insight community, you'll find many recorded videos and webinars for you to watch and learn from. You can sign up for your next project management or check out the rest of our webinars by visiting our webinar calendar to register for as many as you'd like. And that's all we have for you today. We'd like to thank Cameron for a great session, and of course, thank our audience for your time as usual. We hope to have you on board for our next webinar. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thanks very much.